The alpha male of hair loss has returned for one last entry in this series, in which I'm wearing this red Hawaiian shirt on a lazy Saturday, as some of my kids are doing cameos in these videos. So they may show up, I don't know, we'll see. Right now they're playing with Play-Doh. All right, hair transplant, let's talk about that again. What's funny is, one of the sporadic, reoccurring comments I get is people get confused when they see me with hair versus when I was buzzing it off at a zero guard buzz cut. And they'll say, how can he have that much hair? I saw him when he shaved it off and it looked like his hair was really thin. How can he have that much hair? Surely he got a hair transplant. And that explains why he can have as much hair as he does now. Surely he got a hair transplant. And so I make this video just to recognize the fact that my hair is at basically the perfect level of diffuse thinning, in which it looks best when it's completely shaved off, or at least this long. And I'm gonna grow it a little bit longer before I'm gonna see how long I can get it. Because ultimately the longer it gets, the fuller it looks. And for me, it's about making the most of what's going on, okay? So for me, while I'm happy to shave it all off, I am still in that obligation to where, if in my real life, keep in mind, I have a real life outside of doing these videos. It's random that I do these videos because I'm a guy who works in HR, does SEO, search engine optimization on the side, married, has a family, all that stuff. It's random that I do these videos. But because I make the money from them as a supplemental side income that generates while I'm sleeping, that's ultimately why I keep doing it. But really, hair transplant? No, definitely not a hair transplant. It's just, with my level of diffuse thinning, this is how it starts looking as it's thicker. And it's gonna look even better as it gets a little bit longer. As I get, I guess, past, maybe once I get to about 2.5 inches, then it's really gonna be, and I understand at some point with length, it's actually gonna start looking worse. It's gonna only accentuate the hairline. But as long as we've got a situation here where we've got enough just to kind of downplay that and make that a little bit more squared off, or round it off even, we're good. It's when it gets so long that it's like going back or whatever, and it's gonna, when the wind blows, it's gonna accentuate that part. But for right now, it's getting into that hair transplant look where people are thinking, he can grow that, his hair looks so thin. Exactly, it does when it's growing out from the buzz cut. It gets longer, then in theory it starts looking like a hair transplant. And what exactly do I mean by that? I've tried to explain it in the past, but basically a hair transplant look is when you still have maybe something of a Norwood 2 going on, or Norwood 2.5, but then it just magically freezes conveniently and doesn't go beyond that. Joe McHale would be a prime example of that. If you look at him before his hair transplant, you can see he was what, Norwood 4? This was just about gone. And now his hair looks very similar to mine, Joe McHale. And it's just so perfect of a hairline. It's like, but yeah, obviously I've had a hair transplant. If you watch my other videos, then you know how I personally feel about hair transplants. And that is, I personally, if you need to do that, please do it. Please go right now and get your hair transplant. But for me, it's this concept of having to buy happiness and buy confidence. I don't want to have to pay money for happiness and confidence. I want to create my own happiness and create my own confidence. So when I lose enough hair, I'll shave it off and that's fine. Or in the meantime, I can kind of experiment with links and see, you know, and I know it's still not, even if this looks pretty good, this is always going to be, you know, on its way out. This is thinner back here, and I know that, you know, it doesn't bother me. I recognize it, and see, that's the thing, I can recognize the imperfections of my hair loss patterns. I can recognize it, but I can also be at a point where it doesn't bother me. And I think a lot of people that are younger than me and dealing with hair loss, not only do they recognize their hair loss, but it bothers them. And the difference between them and me is I recognize it, but it doesn't bother me. My identity is not my hair. And my identity is so many other things, but hair is not one of them. So definitely not a hair transplant. As my hair gets longer, it may even look more like a hair transplant when you compare it to the videos where I've shaved off my hair. And I mean, I think it's easily over 100 videos that I've done here in 2018, just of me having the zero guard buzz cut. I mean, I had it for like 3 months, and I was doing often 2 or 3 videos a day. So there's plenty of footage on that you can go back and even type in Nick Shell zero guard buzz cut and see that. And then when you look at the videos throughout the summer, that's when it was growing out. And it looked pretty bad for a long time because of the diffuse thinning, not so much the hairline. So here's where I'm at right now. And, you know, it's starting to apparently get that hair transplant look. And maybe that's what I'm dealing with. As long as I, you know, decide to keep my hair until it starts getting, the hair loss, you know, starts getting worse, I may look like a guy who's had a hair transplant, which is a funny thing that you can look like someone who had a hair transplant. But I think really what that means is, compared to footage, pictures of them before, it may look like that way once they start growing out their hair. And I think what's confusing about all of this is how many Hollywood stars, people in movies, have had hair transplants. You know, we can look at Paul Rudd, who hasn't had a hair transplant, but he's in his 50s. And like, how could he still have hair that looks like that? To have that density, and even that hairline in his 50s, how could that still be? Good genetics. Overall, he just looks younger anyway, yet he's in his 50s. And then there are others that, you know, it's speculated that they have had hair transplants. So, Star-Lord, you know, he has had hair transplants from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's highly speculated that he has. And he's just a couple years older than me. So when you get to be about my age, pushing 40, then it starts to get that point where, you know, right after 35, right around age 35, you start getting to the point where either you're going to be losing, you're going to be the guy who's balding the rest of your life, or you're going to be the guy who's probably for the most part keeping your hair for the rest of your life. I'm in that right in between, because my hairline's not so bad, but the diffuse thinning has progressed to the degree where I think what's going to happen is, for the rest of my life, I'm going to just continue diffusing. And I think maybe I'll make it to my 50s, but even by my 50th birthday, in like however many, 12 and a half years, I think by my 50th birthday, what's going to happen is I'm going to have definitely a more pronounced bald spot there. And I think I'm going to have a more pronounced thinning spot here, because it's already pretty weak there. I think for the most part I'll still have a full head of hair, but then you're going to be able to notice those things. I think, and I'm basing that on where I am at 35, because again, one of my hair loss theories is how, wherever you are at age 35, that's kind of the make it or break it. If you still have most of your hair, then you're probably going to keep most of your hair the rest of your life. But if you've already got some aggressive hair loss by age 35, then most likely you're going to be bald in this years to follow shortly after that, which also goes back to one of my hair loss theories, and that is, look at a picture of yourself at age 1, that's a projection of you at age 35, which is exactly at that time. I invented that theory. It doesn't exist outside of Nick Shell. I invented it. I've talked about it so much. I claim the rights to that theory. Now, what that doesn't exactly account for is diffuse thinning, and we can say that about, what is his name, Prince William in England, because he and I are basically the same age, yet he's what, Norwood 5. And if you look at his picture when he was 1 year old, then, you know, he had his hair looked fine. But so maybe it doesn't account for diffuse thinning. But still though, if this worked even the slight majority of the time, I think it's worth checking out. And by the way, if you want to check that out for me, look it up on my channel. Type in Nick Shell 1 year old photo, and you'll see a couple videos I've done where I'm holding up a picture of myself at age of my 1 year old photo while I was age 35, and I show you how my hairline was exactly the same, because, and that's kind of, my mom actually brought that to my attention, and she had mentioned it, and then I was like, oh yeah, I think we're onto something here. So there you go. No, I have not had a hair transplant. Maybe I'm a perfect candidate for one, or maybe I look like a person who just had one in comparison to just a couple months ago when I either shaved off my hair or I was growing out my hair. But it's not a part of my identity to want a hair transplant. I did for about a year in college when I started seeing that the Norwood 2 thing was going on, and I was thinking, oh no, am I going to lose my hair? I mean, I was there. I was where a lot of you are. But not only did my hairline continued to progress, but the diffuse thinning didn't kick in until I was 30, and that's what started really kind of making the difference. But I was already shaving my head in college anyway, not even for the sake of, because, you know, to prepare for hair loss, but mainly because everybody in my dorm did. But then I realized, wow, so much confidence is gained when you shave it off anyway. So that's why for me, as I'm kind of riding the fence, finding out what's going to happen here, I'm good either way. I can make the most of this and accept the fact that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be thinner back there, and the hairline's going to go up a bit, and there's going to be this patch right here where it's just really kind of thinned out. And I can either go with that or I can shave it off. But in some ways, it's easier if you're younger and you have more hair loss than I do, because then at least you know what to do, and that's to shave it off. Whereas for me, I have these obligations to people that I actually love and care about and that I live with and around me, and they'd rather me commit to the hair while I still have it. So I do. And there's another irony, because a lot of people are like, well, I want to keep enough hair so girls will like me. And so then you're obligated to try to keep hair. And it's funny because even me, I deal with the same obligation. But it will be a relief when I can finally just commit to the zero guard buzz cut. I am Nick Shell. I am the alpha male of hair loss. And this has been a video about hair transplants, or the lack thereof. Comments are always accepted.